In Ridley Scott's 1982 film Blade Runner, the director's cut, we follow the story of a Blade Runner, Rick Deckard, who has been assigned to track down and execute 4 escaped replicants, who have illegally returned to Earth from space. In this scene, we see Blade Runner Deckard chasing and retiring a replicant, Zora, the first of the 4 he has been assigned to execute. We know at the beginning of this scene that Deckard has been exploring his own thoughts about if he is a human or replicant, and we know that he hasn't wanted to take on this Blade Runner assignment. In this analysis, we explore the editing techniques in this scene employed by editor Terry Rawlings that convey Deckard's regular state of confusion, that he has a conscience about this assignment, and how brutal life in this future world is. To quote Rawlings, "It's a much more interesting film if you sat there and worked it out for yourself." We will step through how the editing of this scene has invoked audience participation in the film's suspense, confusion, and empathy through relations that are rhythmic, spatial, graphic, and temporal, and how continuous and discontinuous editing shapes the narrative. Bordwell and Thompson discuss that the filmmaker relies on movement in the mise-en-scène, camera position and movement, the rhythm of sound, and the overall context to determine the editing rhythm. The editing rhythm of this scene fits to the frantic and erratic behaviour of the chase and capture. The suspense is compelled by the pacing of the cuts and the changes in the shot duration, which accelerate or decelerate the chase. This is bolstered by standout use of sound effects. In the early chase sequence, the diegetic sounds from the city and crowd are overbearing. We hear chaotic sounds enveloping the shots of Deckard when he has no sight of Zora. Honking, sirens, banging, traffic signal noise, chanting, these all amplify the difficulty of a chase in a bustling city. Deckard's disorientation is reinforced by his frantic movements, his confused point of view shots, cutting on action between varied shot sizes, shaky camera movement, and panning. Sounds are used as signals to the audience of what could happen next. We see Deckard looking for Zora from the crowded streetcar, whilst we hear the pedestrian crossing repeat, "Cross now." The audience gets an awareness of Zora hiding in the stairwell, and whilst Deckard has no sight of her, we hear "Don't walk" just before he spots where she could be, alerting a sense of danger in us. As he approaches her, we again only hear the crowd, but as she sees him and moves to get away, we hear "Cross now" again, indicating to a viewer that she might get away safely and giving them some relief. The dynamic cross-cutting of shots used in this sequence show each character individually and may have been filmed in complete separation from each other. The editing use of the Kuleshov effect means the audience believe they are viewing a whole space, where through making their own connection of what they see, believe that Deckard has caught up with Zora in the stairwell. Zora's escape therefore calls for a shift in rhythm of what is seen, and by altering the pattern of what shot is next, alters the audience's perception of how the characters are coexisting at that moment. By simply showing a successive shot of Zora in another place altogether, allows Zora to get away until the viewer can connect them in the same space again through a shot of Deckard.
One of the most commonly used techniques is called graphical editing. Props and vehicles are used multiple times throughout the scene to build a sense of spatial awareness to help orient the audience between each shot. There are multiple instances in the chase scene where visual matches are made in order to transition to another angle, keeping the audience on track with where the actors are moving within the set. Maintaining this visual continuity is important in keeping the rhythm of the sequence flowing smoothly. This is especially noticeable when Deckard spots Zora through the streetcar. The streetcar railing is used to ground the short sequence of shots, where both characters see each other, but also to help smooth the change between perspectives to avoid giving the viewer whiplash. Within the scene, the character's behaviour and movement is very frantic and fast-paced, so it's important to relate the shot elements to each other for continuity. Bordwell and Thompson make reference to this technique in their book, quote, "The director will usually strive to keep the centre of interest roughly constant across the cut." Using continuity editing, Rawlings has employed techniques like centering each character on the screen at the cut transition and making invisible cuts that take advantage of someone walking across the screen. These techniques are especially used when the characters are on the move, when crossing the 180-degree line, or whilst the camera is amongst the crowd, creating a smooth cut that keeps the viewer focused on what they should be seeing and feeling. Eye direction is another important aspect that the editor has used when designing the audience viewing experience. For example, when Deckard loses Zora and rushes to the door of the streetcar, he occupies the left side of the screen whilst looking to the right. This directs the eyes of the viewer to the face of the actor and subconsciously prepares the audience for where Scott and Rawlings want them to look in the following reverse shot. In this reverse shot, the space where Deckard's face and looking direction was previously is now occupied by a train of pedestrians, no sight of Zora, and interestingly, a product placement for Atari. This technique of using the previous shot to set up the flow into the next one is used repeatedly throughout the chase scene, and helps keep the viewer's attention on the disorientation and confusion of Deckard and Zora during the chase. Another tool in the editor's toolbelt is temporal editing. Cutting aspects of the chase out of the final sequence creates a sense of urgency and speed, which reflects the headspace which both characters are in. Wardwell and Thompson mentioned that elliptical editing presents an action in such a way that it consumes less time on the screen than it does in the story. The discontinuous editing of the chase scene, where the pace slows at Zora's capture, provides the audience relief from the suspense. This deliberate slowdown of the editing rhythm drags out the slow motion and slow cuts, allowing the viewer to savour every instant. The effect is reinforced by some of the shots being overlapping, an effect reserved specifically for stretching out a moment. When compared against the previous fast-forwarding of time between shots and actual shot speed, it creates a sense of dissociation from the normal flow of time, and really drives home the impact of the event that just took place. The sound design is another key element of the discontinuous editing, shifting the rhythm. If the audience hears a replicant silenced, and then very melancholic, ethereal music is introduced, with gunshots and breaking glass, but the most poignant is the very human sound of a heartbeat, which anchors the audience in their confusion about if Deckard is a replicant or a human. Consequently, the bustling city atmosphere takes over and Move On is heard, which feels jarring and insensitive to the audience, reinforcing the lacking empathy of the overpopulated world. All of these techniques are effective in drawing the audience into the scene and invoking an emotional response from them. The dynamism in the graphic and rhythmic composition puts viewers in Deckard's mind. They can feel how disoriented and confused he is. The chase is just a tool to transport the audience to where they need to go and to get them to participate. In reality, this frantic chase would have had a very abrupt ending, but the importance of Zora's retirement and its impact on Deckard is a key moment in the film, and Rawlings has emphasised this tragedy and emotion by exaggerating time and alerting senses. By the audience feeling something about Zora's death and questioning Deckard themselves, their participation in the intent of the film meets the exact ambition of the editor.